Alaska's wilderness had always been known for swallowing aircraft whole, leaving families with questions that never get answered. Hale Boggs joined that grim statistic when his Cessna disappeared during a campaign flight, becoming another missing politician in America's second-largest state. But the recent discovery proved this was no ordinary crash. The aircraft's condition defied every assumption about what happened that day. Forensic evidence inside the cabin suggests the plane was brought down deliberately, and the method used points to capabilities that shouldn't have existed in 1972. Hale Boggs wasn't just another congressman. As House Majority Leader in 1972, he was second in line for the speakership and one of the most influential Democrats in Washington. He had served Louisiana's 2nd District for 30 years, surviving political battles that destroyed lesser men. Colleagues described him as fearless, principled, and dangerously outspoken about government overreach. Thomas Hale Boggs Sr. was 58 years old, a World War II veteran who had helped shape American policy through the Cold War. He sat on the Warren Commission, investigating Kennedy's assassination. He had publicly criticized J. Edgar Hoover and the FBI's surveillance programs. He was not a man who stayed quiet when he discovered wrongdoing. On October 16, 1972, Boggs departed Anchorage aboard a twin-engine Cessna 310 with Congressman Nick Begich, pilot Don Johns, and Begich's aide Russell Brown. Their destination was Juneau for a campaign fundraiser. The flight time was expected to be 3.5 hours over some of the most treacherous terrain in North America. Weather conditions were marginal, but flyable. Boggs had made this trip dozens of times before. What none of them knew was that this routine political flight would become one of America's most enduring mysteries. The Cessna's last radio contact came at 1:30 p.m., reporting position over Portage Pass. Then silence. When the aircraft failed to arrive in Juneau, search operations began immediately. The Coast Guard, Air Force, Navy, and Civil Air Patrol launched the largest search in Alaska's history. For 39 days, 50 aircraft and dozens of ground teams scoured 325,000 square miles of wilderness. They found nothing. No wreckage, no emergency signals, no trace of 4 men who had simply vanished into the mountains. The official conclusion was pilot error or mechanical failure in severe weather. Case closed. The families were told their loved ones had died in a tragic but unremarkable accident, another casualty of Alaska's unforgiving geography. But investigators had missed something crucial. The flight plan Johns filed didn't match the route he actually flew. Radio transmissions contained anomalies that air traffic controllers noted but never reported. And Boggs had been receiving death threats for months before the flight, threats that the FBI documented but never investigated. For 52 years, the families lived with uncertainty, while conspiracy theories flourished in the absence of evidence. Modern satellite imaging and ground-penetrating radar had revolutionized wilderness searches. In 2024, a private search team using advanced terrain mapping identified an anomaly in a remote glacier valley 200 miles southeast of Anchorage. The recovery team included former NTSB investigators, forensic specialists, and mountaineering experts. The location was accessible only by helicopter in perfect weather conditions. They had a narrow window before winter storms made the site unreachable for another year. At 8,400 feet elevation, embedded in a glacier that had been slowly moving for 5 decades, they found the Cessna 310. The aircraft was remarkably preserved, the cold having prevented normal decomposition and corrosion. Initial examination seemed to confirm the official story. The plane had crashed in mountainous terrain during poor weather, pilot error, or mechanical failure. Nothing unusual. Then the forensic team began examining the wreckage more closely. What they discovered inside the cabin made 3 investigators request immediate evacuation from the site. What the recovery team found challenged every assumption about October 16, 1972. The aircraft's control surfaces showed damage patterns inconsistent with ground impact. Metallurgical analysis revealed microscopic residue of an explosive compound that wouldn't be declassified until 1985. The cabin interior contained evidence that the occupants had survived the initial impact. Personal effects were arranged in ways that suggested the men had lived for hours, possibly days, after the crash. Emergency supplies had been consumed. A makeshift shelter had been constructed using aircraft components. But the most disturbing discovery was electronic equipment that had no business being aboard a civilian aircraft in 1972. Sophisticated recording devices, radio transmitters operating on classified frequencies, and navigation equipment that matched specifications for military surveillance operations. The official cause of pilot error was impossible. Don Johns was an experienced Alaska pilot with 17,000 flight hours. The weather that day was challenging, but within his capabilities. The aircraft's maintenance records showed no mechanical issues. The explosive residue told a different story. Someone had planted a device designed to disable the aircraft's control systems, forcing it down in a location where recovery would be impossible. The technology existed in 1972, but only within classified military programs. Hale Boggs hadn't died in an accident. He had been assassinated using methods that wouldn't be acknowledged for another decade. The discovery devastated families who had spent 52 years believing their loved ones died in a tragic accident. Learning that Boggs, Begich, Johns, and Brown had been murdered changed everything about their grief and their understanding of American politics. Lindy Boggs, Hale's widow, had built a distinguished political career of her own, serving in Congress and as ambassador to the Vatican. She died in 2013, never knowing the truth about her husband's fate. Their children had grown up, raised families, and grown old while the evidence of assassination sat frozen in an Alaska glacier. The recovery operation itself claimed one life. A helicopter carrying forensic equipment crashed during the evacuation, killing the pilot and destroying crucial evidence before it could be analyzed. Federal agencies immediately classified the findings. Families were told the investigation was ongoing but could not be discussed for national security reasons. The same government that had failed to protect Boggs was now controlling the narrative about his death. The ethical questions multiplied. Should the public know that a sitting congressman was assassinated? Should families have closure if that closure threatens national security? Who decides what truths are too dangerous for democracy? The Cessna 310 remains in federal custody at an undisclosed location. The forensic evidence has been sealed under national security provisions that may never be lifted. Official records still list the cause as pilot error in adverse weather conditions. Hale Boggs' final resting place is known now, but the men who ordered his death remain protected by classification levels that outlast human lifespans. The technology that brought down his aircraft has evolved into capabilities that would terrify the congressman who once warned about government overreach. In a remote Alaska valley, 4 men spent their final hours knowing they had been betrayed by the system they served. The wilderness that swallowed them whole has finally given up their bodies, but the secrets they carried may stay buried forever. The official story stands. The truth waits in classified files that may never see daylight. And somewhere in Washington, the people who ordered Hale Boggs silenced are still protecting the secrets he died trying to expose.